Walt Disney once said that for every laugh there should be a tear, which is why I think, anyway, he would have loved Drawn to Life, that hugely entertaining, surprising, and emotional spectacle, which is now being presented live on stage at Disney Springs in Lake Buena Vista, Florida. Presented by Cirque du Soleil and Disney, this is a show that I can guarantee you will captivate audiences of all ages. Drawn to Life is a must-see, family-friendly spectacle that will leave you, well, in awe. So don't miss out on your chance to be part of the magic. Plan your visit to Disney Springs today and reserve your seats for Drawn to Life by Cirque du Soleil and Disney live on stage. Set your imagination in motion.
Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish Podcast with Jim Hill. It's me, Len Testa, and this is our show for the week of Schmurz Day, May 13th, 2024. On the show today, news and listener questions. Then in our main segment, Jim and I look back at the development of Disney's Typhoon Lagoon, including the never-made Typhoon Lagoon movie. Let's get started by bringing in the man who quit his job at the helium factory because he didn't like being spoken to in that tone of voice. It's Mr. Jim Hill. Jim, how's it going?
It's going well, Len. And speaking of helium, I spent a very long night with members of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade studio team back in August of 2015. We were outside the Anaheim Convention Center as they inflated that 68-foot-long, 40-foot-high version of Buzz Lightyear that Macy's had built in honor of the 20th anniversary of the release of the original Toy Story.
Really?
Yeah, and what was kind of interesting is we were up all night inflating this thing because the idea was that at 5 a.m. West Coast time, Buzz, in all his helium-filled glory, would then make an appearance on Good Morning America at 8 o'clock to promote the first day of that year's D23 Expo.
Okay.
What was interesting, Len, is Buzz is actually made up of nearly 20 different balloon segments, and each of which has to be filled with helium one at a time. And I remember around 3 a.m. when it finally came time to inflate Buzz's butt.
Okay, go ahead. A phrase that I don't think has been uttered yet in American broadcasting.
Well,
okay.
well, there we go. But that was the thing. The parade studio teams were having a lot of fun with the notion of, this kind of goes against the natural order, pumping gas into. And it's,
exactly. Yes.
So
there's irony for you.
There we go. And what's the line from Country Bear? Len Henry used to say that we only have high class stuff on this show. So it's like, just sorry about that joke, folks. And
continuing this tradition.
There we go.
All right, Jim. Let's do a quick shout out to subscribers. Thanks to everyone who subscribes to our show over at patreon.com/Jim Hill Media, including Tom Drenko, Katrina Societ, Matt Flynn, Adam Fortner, John Lockamy, and Mary Johnson. Jim, these are the Disney cast members with one of the most difficult jobs in the galaxy, ensuring that all the spaceships in Star Wars agree on the same direction for up when they emerge from hyperspace, because space travel doesn't have fixed positioning. They say that relative orientation is fun when half the team's upside down on Zoom calls, but not great when you're trying to coordinate attacks on the Star Destroyers. True story.
Wow.
I know, things you don't think about. Like, how do we all agree which direction's up?
Wow.
On to the news. Folks, the news is sponsored by touringplans.com. Touring Plans helps you save time and money at theme parks like Walt Disney World. Check us out at touringplans.com. All right, Jim, first bit of news. It looks like the Anaheim City Council has approved, finally, the Disneyland Forward plan. We reported on the initial approval meeting a couple of weeks ago, and now this looks like it's a done deal, right?
It does. It does. That though, using the phrase "done deal" and with all of the caveats to the effect of what they need to spend $1.9 billion between now and what is it? 2034.
Yeah, but it's not specified on what. Like, do wages count there? Because that's easier, right? Does executive compensation count in this?
One would hope not.
That's why they have lawyers. Anyway, so that's good. And so I don't think that D23 is coming up in August, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I don't expect we're going to hear much about definitive plans for Disneyland Forward at this D23. I think this one's going to be focused on cruise and Walt Disney World, but eventually we'll hear something, right?
No, I agree. I think people need to be ready that this is kind of different from anything Disney's done previously. So, don't go in with the same sort of mindset, I guess, is a polite way of putting it.
And real quick on the Disneyland Forward thing. So there's been talk online about there being a third gate and also expansions of the existing two parks. If you had to guess one way or the other, would you say third gate or expansion of second park?
I would argue that it's more likely we will get expansions of the existing properties, largely because what's been interesting, and again, this is what's fun about working with Mr. Schul, is sort of looking at what there is actually for land. And, understanding that, for example, one of the ideas that keeps bubbling up is a hotel inside of this new development
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I hadn't heard that part. Okay.
Yeah. Well, similar to what's about to come online with Fantasy Springs over at Tokyo Disney Seas. So, the notion of, there would be a hotel, to within the park and again, with the notion of anybody who's previously stayed at the Grand Californian or the Disneyland Hotel would now have the option of experiencing that resort.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
But, again, that eats up available real estate as well.
Yeah. So like on a per square foot basis, what does your optimal revenue model look like? Yeah.
I would argue also, face it, when you think about, we're on our third iteration of California Adventure and the notion that, let's put a third park in here that we can then revisit, 3 different times every 20
years. Every 6 years. Yeah. And this was my argument against a third park, and that was around theming and differentiation. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not going to be a water park because water parks don't have the capacity or revenue that Disney's looking for that super valuable real estate. So if it was going to be a third park, what would the theme be? I mean, conceivably they could do studios, but they've already got an actual studios. And if they did a studios, right, the Pixar stuff is already firmly embedded in the other parks. The Star Wars stuff firmly embedded in the other parks. Marvel is already in the other parks. It would be hard to say okay, this is a studio park, but only for these franchises. Like it doesn't make sense. The expansion of the two existing parks makes more sense.
Oh no, absolutely. And face it, when you think about the one thing that Iger has shared about what's coming, our Avatar: The Way of Water, themed area with its ride, it's immediately you're like, okay, this is, we kind of know what's coming over the horizon here. It's leaning into Disney's strongest IPs. And then it becomes a question of, okay, what makes sense in Disneyland and what makes sense in a California Adventure. So.
Yeah, then you're basically trying to figure out which cards you keep and which cards you throw away, right?
There you go. There you go.
Cool. In other news, Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party tickets went on sale for Walt Disney World last week. Interesting thing to note there, Jim, besides the dates, which are August 9th to October 31st, is that Disney said that Tiana's Bayou Adventure will be open during the party. So that narrows down the opening date for Tiana's to before August 9th.
Oh, okay.
Which we kind of knew. I mean, I still think it's going to be June, but that gives us it pulls in the summer number anyway.
Okay. Well, yet another incentive to spring for the Not So Scary tickets, I guess.
Also, Jim, last week, Disney had its earnings call for the previous quarter. We're going to talk here about theme parks. So domestic theme park increases, Disney noted, came mostly through inflation and higher prices. I note that neither of those are really a long-term or sustainable strategy. Like, we're charging more for the stuff that we've already built, and inflation does not seem to be the selling point that the consumers, right? I did note that the cruise business is still super solid, though.
Yeah. Are there any concerns there, though, with 2 new ships being added to the inventory, let alone the mega ship that's coming overseas? I mean, I'm guessing with the investment on Lighthouse Point and that sort of thing, everybody's like, no, this is printing money. We add ships, we will fill ships.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look after they get all of the ships into rotation, they're going to be clearing $1 billion in revenue from the ships every year. So that's just a ton of money. To your point, it is like printing money. The thing I'm trying to figure out there is they can't put all of the ships in Florida, right? Just from a logistical perspective, that doesn't sound like a great idea. But what are they going to do with the Wonder? What are they going to do with the Magic? I think those become Asia West Coast, but also the Global Dream, which I forget what Disney's calling that now, but it will always be the Global Dream to me. I mean, that one's going to be based out of Singapore, so
yeah. I mean, it is going to be interesting to see, how the chess pieces move around the board over the next 5 years or so. So
the other thing that I thought was really interesting on the earnings call, and you and I and Jim Hill talked about this yesterday. There was a lot of focus on Disney Plus, obviously, but Bob Iger specifically used the words recommendation engines twice, which I think is the first time he's ever said when I talked about recommendation engines. And that's interesting because for all of their analytical expertise, Disney's not great at technology. But so a recommendation engine here is the thing on Netflix that tells you, if you like this, we think you'll like that, right? And you'll recall back in the early 2000s, Netflix set up $1 million prize for data scientists who could improve the quality of their recommendation engine by 10%. And that was back when $1 million was a lot of money to data scientists, and it really kickstarted the whole data science competition thing. So that's how Kaggle, I think, really got famous and stuff like that. But for Disney's CEO to specifically use the phrase recommendation engine, which is a fairly technical term, right, to me tells me that two things. One, it's actively something that they're working on and that he's getting briefed on. But also, number two, it tells me that Disney's trying to figure out a way to get more eyeballs on the content they already bought rather than investing in new shows.
Yeah. In fact, just yesterday when you pointed this out, I think it was Mr. Schul who volunteered that, if you think about it, Disney's paid $79 billion for, vast chunks of Fox's film library and television titles. And, how much of that material has been used today? I mean, we're 5 years into that deal. And, a lot of that stuff is just sitting there unused. So the fact that they're, recommendations engines are now, a priority at Disney tells you, it's time to really make the library start working for us. Both the Fox library, Disney library, Pixar library, Marvel, the works.
So I did some additional research on this morning. One of the things that I realized after doing that I didn't know yesterday was this. If you look at the most streamed shows by minutes, they are dominated by shows that are 10 years old or older, right? They're existing shows that have been around. So like Friends is in the top 10 for streaming minutes. Suits, I think, was number 1 last year, according to Nielsen. Supernatural. So basically, any show that has had a long run with many hundreds of episodes, those get the eyeballs. Now, the interesting thing is, if you look at minutes per episode, it's very low. In fact, it's much lower than any new original content. But the thing is that, I like to say, quantity has a quality all its own, right? So
I love that. Okay.
Yeah. It's not mine. It's not mine, by the way. So
okay.
But yeah. So if you look at the older TV series, they get about 7 times more viewing minutes than new TV series. And again, part of that is because they have hundreds of episodes. But in the end, if your goal, Jim, is to sell ads to eyeballs, you don't really care what they're watching so much as that they're watching, right? And so for that, you're gonna pick a TV series with 240 episodes or more, which is bingeable, right? Over a series that has 20 episodes that you're going to maybe spend $1 billion to create that maybe people will watch, right?
Of course, the irony here is that what seems to have emerged as a pattern when it comes to series for subscription streaming services is 10 episodes per season and then 3 seasons and done. I mean, it's just sort of
the Netflix model. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it exactly.
Yeah, because then so Netflix's theory there is that production costs start to spike after 3 years and viewership tends to go down. So that's the sweet spot for 3 years. The other interesting thing that I noted, the thing that we talked about for TV series, where older TV series generate the most viewing minutes, it's the exact opposite for movies. If you look at the most streamed movies, according to Nielsen in 2023, the oldest one was Frozen, which was 10 years old. So movies, when it comes to streaming, direct to consumer, consumers watch movies on streaming, new movies, but they watch old TV series. New movies, old TV series. That's streaming.
How bizarre. Wow. Okay.
I would not have guessed it until I did this research, yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. Key to success is make an old TV series. Okay. There we go.
That's what we need to do. Make an old TV.
Somebody call Dark Crown. Okay. I think we've hit upon it, Len. Go back to the 50s. Make a TV series. Okay. Got it. Okay.
Also, shout out to our friend Mono Thingy over on WW Magic for helping me work through that. All right. So that was interesting. All right. And then a bunch of refurbs were announced last week. The big one, Jim, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad in Magic Kingdom is going down for a year starting in September.
Okay. But just remember what we've been hearing about what's coming to the kingdom beyond Big Thunder. All right. So, yes, the actual physical attraction will receive a rehab, which again, it's a coaster. You have to do that.
It's an outdoor coaster.
It's an outdoor coaster. But
you want this done. Yeah.
Okay. But at the same time, remember, at some point in the not so distant future, people are going to now have to move around Big Thunder, head across that canal that allows things like the Liberty Bell to go backstage and then off to the dry dock. There's got to be a way for now tens of thousands of guests per day to go beyond this attraction and then move into that new space. So all I'm saying is, this is, it's a refurb, and they do these for coasters, but watch this space, for additional work being done, in much the same way as, if you were paying attention to like when they put the walkway next to Hungry Bear, Golden Bear at Critter Country out in California, to allow guests access to what eventually became Galaxy's Edge for California. So, that's just keep an eye out for that.
I think one of the great things about the entire Beyond Big Thunder project is that we'll be able to get a decent sense of where it's going just riding the Walt Disney World Railroad, as long as it's running. At this point, we don't even need Bio Reconstruct. We need the train version of Bio Reconstruct.
Well, it's not like he's not already busy, but sure, Bio, start riding the train.
Also, Disney confirmed that Rock and Roller Coaster is still on schedule to reopen this summer. Mm-hmm. Also, they offered me a bridge that connects Manhattan to Brooklyn, which is really weird. Did you get that email?
No, I'm not on that list, Len.
Also, last week, Disney extended the South Florida Water Management District permit another 5 years for the area between Fort Wilderness and Wilderness Lodge, which, Jim, this is where the Reflections Lakeside Lodge was supposed to be built. And we've said before on the show that this idea isn't dead. And while it's not actively being worked on, is this another sign that Disney just wants to keep its options open?
Yeah. Again, where this just gets interesting is that, do we have we talked on the previous show because of the Bay Lake Tower redo, which again, 9 months to a year, changing out soft goods, that sort of thing. So we sort of have a ballpark on when the DVC next to the Poly is coming online, right?
Well, they said this year. They said 2024 for that, yeah.
Okay. So, and let's face it, it's always that interesting thing when it comes to DVC about what sells. And, the smart money is a DVC that's, that's in the resort, Magic Kingdom resort area is going to do great.
Yeah, and so walking to the Magic Kingdom is a selling point. Yeah.
There we go. So, long story short, if that's a success, you then have the opportunity. It's like, look, we've had yet another success. Let's revisit Reflections. And again, I guess it will be interesting because we got so much artwork, so much of a sense of what Reflections was going to be like. And it just, if they revisited it, you got to wonder, that seemed like a great combination of elements. I mean, leaning into Pocahontas theming, Bambi, all of Disney nature. It's like, what would you do differently if you were going to do that again to try to make that much more appealing to DVC folks? Because weren't you saying that even the DVC sales for the the brand new cabins are softer than they expect?
Yeah, and I think there's a number of reasons there. I was talking to some people about this after the show came out. Number one, transportation issues. Number two, not a whole lot of dining or big pool options there as well. And I think that's going to keep things down. But the interesting thing is if they do reflections, right? They could allow DVC privileges to commute between Fort Wilderness and Reflections, because the number of people in the cabins is not going to be huge, right? But it also gives them, if Reflections has dining and transportation options and recreation options, it gives them sort of the three resort strategy between Wilderness Lodge, Fort Wilderness, and Reflections that you kind of see with the Magic Kingdom resort area, or think about the Epcot resort area, where like the density in and of itself is a benefit of things, right? So I think 3 might be the magic number for resorts together.
Okay, let me just throw out one thing that actually dates back when they were going to build Buffalo Junction, pretty much where Reflections is right now. You can actually call up the site plans that show Wilderness Lodge, the DVC next to the Wilderness Lodge, and where Buffalo Junction was going to go. But what was interesting is from the DVC Wilderness Lodge, there was supposed to be a steam train that would take guests there, and again, it was an exclusive transportation system only for the people staying at Wilderness Lodge, DVC, and Buffalo Junction. And I just wonder if, given the lack of reaction or, the less than enthusiastic reaction to Reflections, that it's like, okay, what's it going to take to make this sexy? What's it going to take to make this different? And you got to wonder if, you look at what it would cost to create a steam train. Mind you, a steam train that would work. Remember, Wilderness Lodge, Fort Wilderness had its short-lived steam train that, they had to shut down ultimately because, they hadn't necessarily done it the right way. So, to have especially at that shorter route. But yeah, you can pull up those site plans and you can see the rail path that would have taken you along the edge of Bay Lake. And, it could have been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think when Reflections came out, I don't think any of us was really impressed with the architecture of the lodge. And I think definitely it would need something else to give it a selling point, because the look itself wasn't the selling point.
Well, once you got inside, though, the Pocahontas stuff, the Bambi stuff, it was definitely leaning into that part of the Disney portfolio. But I'll agree, from the outside, it's like, wow, welcome to Holiday Inn. It's just sort of like.
And the other thing too is the properties that you mentioned are not current IP. And again, going back to movies that people watch on streaming, last 10 years. So.
Very interesting point. Very interesting point.
All right. In other news, Disney says that Port Orleans French Quarter will undergo a guest room refurbishment from now until November. So the last refurb there was 2018. This is in line with that time frame for sort of a regular soft goods update, so sheets and beds and stuff like that, but not whole room renos like we saw at the Values. Also, Jim, speaking of refurbs, if you haven't seen the Instagram video of Lex, a Universal Studios Hollywood street performer dressed up as a construction worker outside Fast and Furious, please go look for that now. Have you seen this?
No, but
oh my God.
Holy cow. Okay, please.
He's a street misfit character.
Yeah.
He's dressed up in construction, so he's got a high visibility neon yellow and orange vest. He's got the hard hat. He's got the hearing protectors on, but they're on his hat, not over his ears. So every time you talk to him, he lifts it up like he's pretending I can't hear you because I'm good. But here's the great thing. He's asking guests to help him with the construction. Mm-hmm. So he'll give you, the clippy end of a tape measure, and he'll ask you to hold it on the fence, and he'll walk away, to the length of the tape measure, but he's holding the tape measure. But then he'll ask you, okay, what number do you see? And the number's always 1 because you've got the wrong end. And he's like, okay, that's what I got yesterday, but boy, this is just strange. It's not working out.
That's so funny. Wow. I love that bit. Okay.
Anyway, go look for it on Instagram, and then shout out to Lex, and shout out to Universal Studios Hollywood for doing that, because that is really funny. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, to Jim, on to listener emails from Dr. Elizabeth Burbridge, who has a PhD in medieval history, and writes in and says, Disney Parks Instagram recently tried to jump on the coattails of Taylor Swift's new Tortured Poets album release by posting a story captioned, us when we hear there's a Department of Poets in Spaceship Earth. And Jim, this is a video of someone running into the ride with scenes from the ride where we hear the audio say, "Monks toil endlessly, recording books by hand."
Oh.
And so Elizabeth says, my youngest rewatched Mulan. So on a recent trip to Epcot, we did the 360-degree movie in China. And guess who the host is? Tang Dynasty poet Li Bo. They called the monks, who would have been transcribers and illuminators, but not authors, poets, but missed their own actual poet in Epcot. And if you hear that Disney's looking for an historian, please let me know. Jim, this is, going back to, last week's discussion about how the Queen is able to transform herself. Remind me again, why don't we assign re-education camps for certain cultural offenses? Like, if you don't know these things in a park, tell me why we're not forcing your eyeballs to be open and watch TV? Killing me.
No, but thank you, Dr. Burbridge. That's a great get. I hadn't noticed that.
All right. Christine writes in on our Patreon page with this question from last week's discussion about the Rivers of Light show at Animal Kingdom. And Christine says, I'm a new listener and I love the show. I'm curious about your description of the Rivers of Light amphitheater in your May 6th show. You noted that after a day in the sun, the amphitheater felt like sitting in a clay oven. Is there a difference between the construction of the amphitheater compared to the Fantasmic one? The Fantasmic Theater doesn't seem to suffer the same problem. Part of why I'm asking is that I'd love for there to be new animal-friendly nighttime spectaculars at Animal Kingdom someday, and I'm curious what operational challenges Disney would need to overcome to make this happen. All right, so I did a little bit of Googling here, Christine. Here's my theory, and I could be wrong, so if anyone wants to write in, let me know. The Fantasmic Theater faces east, like slightly east-northeast, and the slope of the seats means that the top of the theater blocks afternoon west-facing sun on the bottom seats. So maybe Fantasmic has a little bit more time to cool off. But Rivers of Light faces slightly west, so it's west-southwest and east-northeast. West-northwest. And the seats are stacked as if they wanted to maximize exposure to the sun. There's no shade from the western sun on any of those seats because they sit on the water, so there's no tree line to block it or higher seats, beyond it or anything like that. So that's my theory.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Fantasmic actually has benches, right? Metal benches that you can slide down. Whereas whereas the arenas facing into Discovery River, those are a concrete slab, right? I mean, you're literally sitting on. The idea is it's rockwork which fits the design aesthetic of Expedition Everest, that sort of...
And the concrete's going to be much more dense.
There we go. It holds heat, so to speak.
Yeah, according to Google, concrete. All right, so we have a couple of ideas. If anyone has any other ideas, let me know. Peggy writes in with an update about the Amateur Athletic Union offices at Disney Springs, which was the subject of a recent listener question. And Peggy says a listener had a question about the AAU using Disney's former preview center for office space. If you haven't seen the announcement, the AAU is planning to build an event center at the Olympus Sports Campus in Claremont. Oh, there we go.
Interesting.
And Jim, another Christine, had a question about Disney ticket prices that I love. Here's the question. I was looking at Disneyland tickets for the end of May, and I found that one-day single park tickets were about $154 a day. But two-day tickets were $1 more expensive, making it cheaper to buy two single-day tickets than one two-day ticket. It's not a big difference, but it piqued my interest. So I checked in at Disney World and found that not only were tickets much cheaper, averaging $104 a day, but also that the special offers that Disney World has, like the 4-day tickets for $99 a day and the 3-day tickets at $89 a day, were significantly better, meaning someone that wanted 4 park days would save $20 by buying a 3-day ticket plus a 1-day ticket. I think that Disney is usually very strategic about their pricing, so what would be the reasoning behind this seemingly counterintuitive pricing scheme? Also, why is Disneyland much more expensive than Disney World? And so, Jim, there are a few things I like in the world better than Disney ticket arbitrage.
Okay,
it's nice to see that I'm not alone here. But here's the interesting thing. We'll start with the Walt Disney World tickets. The 3-day Walt Disney World tickets. The interesting thing about those is that you have to visit the studios, Animal Kingdom, and Epcot one day each. So you don't get into the Magic Kingdom with those tickets, and you can't repeat parks. Also, you can't use it to park hop on the same day, because the tickets are limited to those 3 parks on separate days. And the 4-day ticket is similar in that you get exactly 1 visit to each park, and you can only visit 1 park per day. Otherwise, it'd be cheaper to buy that ticket versus the 3-day park hopper if you wanted to hop only 1 day. But Jim, the interesting thing to me about the 3-day ticket is that the studios is part of the ticket, and its ride capacity is not great right now. So we just mentioned, Rock and Roller Coaster has been down most of the year. And so they've only got 8 rides and some shows. And of those 8 rides, 1 is definitely for small children. So 7 rides for adults, not counting all the downtime that the rides have. So is this just a case of we need to get people on site for 3 days using the cheapest ticket we can?
How does this stack up against what's going on at Disneyland?
The Disneyland tickets are also interesting. So I checked late May, 2 different weeks. And Christina's right in that 2 one-day tickets are less expensive than 1 2-day ticket. The difference is around $22 before tax. And I think the only difference in ticket options is that, obviously 2 one-day tickets are only good on the specific days you choose. But the second day of a 2-day ticket can be used up to 2 weeks after the first day is used. So you get a little longer to use that second day, and then extra time costs you $22. But the thing is, if you're coming in from out of town and you already know the dates that you're going to be in Disneyland, it's definitely cheaper to buy the 2 one-day tickets. So that tells me that's what out-of-state tourists should do.
All right. Well, then tuck that factoid away. Because what? An extra $22, buys you 1 hamburger at Disneyland.
It would buy you a breakfast at the cafe on Main Street. So, there's that. All right. We haven't done this section in a while, but I was looking through Disney's patent filings recently, and I found a really interesting one. I wanted to get your take on it. The patent is titled Entertainment System for a Vehicle. And we've talked briefly about this a while ago, but it describes how to add external video displays to a ride vehicle so someone inside can see it. And the thing that surprised me about this patent filing is that one of the examples shows an elephant in a safari. So I've added this figure to the show notes, Jim, you can see it there. But it says specifically in the drawing, "Welcome to the safari. Use the controls to drive towards an animal for a closer view." And obviously that's virtual, but why would they specifically say safari, show an elephant, and talk about this? Part of me was like, are we going to just automate the spiel for safaris? But you still have to have a driver, so what's the point?
Yeah, it's worth noting, and I think we've talked about this previously, about the fact that, the challenge of doing anything involving, real animals is, the back of house aspect. You need barns. You need, the corridors to get the animals safely out to the exhibit area, and, that sort of thing. So, kind of intriguing that we're seeing what would appear to be a ride system that could bring one virtually into an animal-based experience. And that's kind of worth noting, about what that would potentially mean for, from a footprint, so to speak, for an animal kingdom. The notion of, you could bring a new attraction in that, got people closer to animals in a virtual sense, but they in turn would you don't have to feed a virtual animal, Len.
I'm just going to pitch this idea to you, Jim. Are you ready? Okay. Mm-hmm. And keeping with the animal kingdom's theme of environmentality, this idea of mine that I just had right now is a recycling opportunity. Disneyland, I note, Jim, is getting rid of its gas-powered Autopia cars. Okay. You slap a video monitor on this, and you set them loose on the safari where people can drive around. Hear me out, Jim. Hear me out. Okay.
I was about to say, is this more of an animal enrichment thing than an entertainment thing for the guests? Give the cheetahs a real challenge, right?
You take 1 car every day. Yeah. You slather it in chicken grease. You release it.
Wow. Okay. Wow. I have no words.
Maybe not, or maybe not. Maybe that's
maybe not. Okay.
Anyway, it's there. So we'll see what happens with this. Yeah, there's no way that Disney's going to allow individual guests to drive vehicles on the savannas of the safari. Yeah. So it's an interesting choice here. But
no, it is. That was cool. Let's see what happens with that.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Jim tells us about the history of Typhoon Lagoon, including the unmade water park movie. Please, God, tell me that it starred Steve Guttenberg in a Speedo. We'll be right back.
Work smarter, not harder. That's what they say, right? But it's hard to apply that mindset to every aspect of your life, like, for example, cooking. I mean, you still have to go to the store and shop for all the necessary ingredients, and then once you get home, there's then all that prep that you need to do out ahead of actually cooking your next meal, which typically involves a lot of chopping. Well, what if I were to tell you there's now a way you could avoid those trips to the store? Better yet, eliminate all that chopping. What am I talking about? Green Chef. With Green Chef, you get to choose from over 80 flavor-packed meal options that then get delivered right to your door. Better yet, you can easily customize these meals with preferences like keto, plant-based, Mediterranean, calorie-smart, protein-packed, and gluten-free. And once that Green Chef box shows up at your house, well, all of the premium ingredients they send you come pre-measured and prepped, and better yet, the enclosed card, which features easy-to-follow step-by-step instructions when it comes to how exactly to cook this delicious healthy meal. It includes photos, so it's ridiculously easy to make a Green Chef meal. Nancy and I are eyeballing our next order right now, and while Green Chef's gut and brain health meal options are very, very tempting, I have to admit, I'm torn between their pork chops with truffle sauce meal and their barbecued chicken chopped salad. If that sounds like something you'd like to try, the taking the stress out of meal planning, I mean, go to greenchef.com/DisneyDish50 and use code DisneyDish50 to get 50% off plus 20% off your next 2 months. Again, that's greenchef.com/DisneyDish50 and use code DisneyDish50 for 50% off plus 20% off your next 2 months. Green Chef, the #1 meal kit for eating well. We thank them for sponsoring today's show. You need to watch what you eat. That's a message we're constantly getting these days. It's coming at us from all directions, and I get it, I do. But have you actually consumed any of this stuff, like protein shakes? Boring. And protein bars? It's like you're nibbling at a piece of chalk. I mean, wouldn't it be great if there was something out there for those of us who, well, we're not exactly counting carbs. We're carb conscious. We're trying to make better choices when it comes to our overall dietary habits. That's why I am so glad when I'm strolling down the cereal aisle to see all of those boxes of Magic Spoon. Why am I glad, you ask? Well, the nice folks at Magic Spoon have reinvented all of our favorite cereals from childhood in such a way that these cereals still taste great, but each serving of Magic Spoon contains 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and 4 to 5 grams of net carbs per serving. Not only that, but Magic Spoon is high protein, gluten-free, grain-free, and soy-free. Plus, it's only 140 calories a serving. And we also need to talk about Magic Spoon's chewy, delicious treats, which come in 4 flavors: marshmallow, chocolatey peanut butter, blueberry muffin, and double chocolate. These Magic Spoon treats are just like those marshmallowy goodies you had as a kid, but these treats have only 1 gram of sugar and 2 grams of net carbs, and they're packed with 11 to 12 grams of protein per bar. These Magic Spoon treats have become my go-to snack between lunch and dinner. They come 4 to a box, and they're super convenient, also super tasty. So if this sounds like something you'd like to try, head on over to magicspoon.com/DisneyDish and build a custom bundle of cereal. And don't forget to add some of their chewy, delicious treats to your order. Also, be sure to use our promo code DisneyDish at checkout to save $5 off. Mind you, Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund your money. No questions asked. Remember, get your next delicious bowl of high-protein cereal at magicspoon.com/DisneyDish and use code DisneyDish to save $5 off. We thank them for sponsoring today's episode. Walt Disney once said that for every laugh there should be a tear, which is why, I think anyway, he would have loved Drawn to Life, that hugely entertaining, surprising, and emotional spectacle that's now being presented live on stage at Disney Springs in Lake Buena Vista, Florida. Presented by Cirque du Soleil and Disney, this is a show that I can guarantee you will captivate audiences of all ages. I saw this show during a recent trip to Walt Disney World, and let me tell you, I'm ready to go see it again right now. Drawn to Life is filled with breathtaking acrobatics, stunning visuals, and heartwarming storytelling. The creative geniuses behind Cirque du Soleil and Walt Disney Animation Studios have come together to create this show where imagination literally knows no bounds. Filled with dazzling performances, not to mention beloved Disney characters coming to life in ways you've only just dreamed about, Drawn to Life is a must-see, family-friendly spectacle that will leave you, well, in awe. So don't miss out on your chance to be part of the magic. Plan your visit to Disney Springs today and reserve your seats for Drawn to Life by Cirque du Soleil and Disney, live on stage. Set your imagination in motion.
And we're back. All right.
Well, all right. To sort of jump into it, Len, everybody thinks they know the Typhoon Lagoon story. I mean, at first glance, it's obvious why this water park got built at Walt Disney World. I mean, we've talked about River Country. Opened at the Fort Wilderness Campground, June of '76. 5-acre complex, hugely popular right off the bat. But because of where River Country was built along the shore of a Bay Lake near Cypress Point, oddly enough, right where Reflections, was going to be built, it's both hard to get to and a site that's difficult to expand. But over time, Len, the thinking always was, well, Disney's gotta expand River Country. I mean, that place sells out every morning. They're turning customers away daily. Disney's leaving money on the table. But here's where it gets interesting. Back then, and we're talking mid-'70s, leaving money on the table was actually part of the Disney business plan, at least when it came to Florida. Mouse House managers there wanted to be seen as good neighbors, more to the point, as great employers. This was actually back in the day, Len, when most cast members worked a 40-hour work week. They had great benefits and health insurance. And Dick Nunes, the then head of Disney's outdoor recreation division, that was the part of the company that the parks were under at that point. He was quoted as saying that when it comes to Orlando, and especially when it comes to those hotels and motels down at 192 in Kissimmee and St. Cloud, we're happy to let nickels and dimes roll off the table and go into the pockets of people who operate those places. After all, the guests who stay off-site still come to Disney World and spend their dollars here. So there's more than enough money to go around.
Could you imagine a Disney executive saying that now on a call?
The mid to late 70s were a different time, Len, and, they would be frog marched out of the building. But another reason that Disney World did not expand River Country at this time was Epcot. Yeah, all of the company's design and development efforts, more to the point, its financial resources were focused on getting this second gate open. So there was literally no money or time or talent to assign to the expansion of River Country. So, and what's interesting, Len, is other people took advantage of Disney's distraction. I mean, take, for example, SeaWorld creator George Millay. He saw how popular River Country was right out of the box and thought, one of those, a water park that was more centrally located, easier for people to get to, would make money hand over fist. So he acquires a chunk of property along I Drive and at the corner of I Drive and what's now known as Universal Boulevard. He builds the very first Wet n Wild, which opens March of '77, just 9 months after River Country opened in June of '76. Now, what's funny, Len, is George Millay was wrong. Wet n Wild wasn't a hit straight out of the box, largely because, and this part of the story, I just hugely ironic. The first summer that Wet n Wild Orlando is open, summer of '77, it's incredibly rainy. Central Florida sees a record number of thunderstorms, which means for safety reasons, Wet n Wild sometimes has to shut down and then offer its customers make good tickets to come back.
We didn't make any money today, and we're not going to make any money in the future. Yeah, great.
But summer of '78, Central Florida's weather settles into a more predictable pattern. Wet n Wild hits its stride, becomes hugely popular with locals, and and that park starts making buku bucks. Meanwhile, over at Disney World, October of that same year, 1978, Card Walker formally announces that they're going to go forward with construction of Epcot. Ground will break on this 305-acre complex, which is more than twice the size of the Magic Kingdom, October of 79. And with the park itself opening in October of 82. That said, Len, in order to meet those dates that Walker has announced, Disney pays a terrible price. Epcot, which is originally only supposed to cost the company $400 million, because participants are supposed to shoulder 2/3 of Epcot's construction costs, actually winds up costing the company $1.2 billion, which then leaves Disney saddled with a crushing amount of debt when the park opens in October of 82.
Because at this time, they were still like, what would you say, 7th out of 7 studios when it comes to film revenue?
8th.
Like there was no other place that they were getting 8th. Yeah, 7th out of 8.
I want to say at that point, even Lorimar, a studio that nobody remembers, was making more money than Disney at that point.
They had no other place to get that extra $800 million.
To make matters worse, given the middling word of mouth that Epcot got, don't get me wrong, people admired the scale, the ambition of Epcot, as they were going through it. But at the same time, they were like, well, it was okay, but it was no Magic Kingdom. And so attendance drops in year 2. 1983, Wall Street notices, which leads to a dip in Disney stock price, which then opens the door to speculators and green mailers like Ivan Boesky and Saul Steinberg. And leads to a chain of events that Len and I have discussed previously repeatedly on Disney Dish. So there's no need for us to go into that story again. But end result is late September of 84, less than 2 years after Epcot first opens, Michael Eisner is installed as the new CEO, and the era of Disney priding itself when it comes to being a good neighbor in Central Florida and letting those nickels and dimes roll off the table, that's over, Len.
That's all right. That was great.
But again, understandable. I mean, Disney's just gone through a bruising, very expensive battle to keep the company out of the hands of people like Boesky and Steinberg, who, again, their plan was to, break the company up, sell the individual elements off to the highest bidder, with the parks going to one company, the studio and its film library going to another. And remember that the Bass brothers had stepped in, and in order to shore up the company's finances, they had bought enormous blocks of stock, and the Basses were now looking for strong returns on those investments. So, and then again, we still have the debt issue associated with the construction of Epcot. So as 84 gives way to 85, the whole point of Walt Disney World is to now make as much money as possible. In fact, I remember you shared with me once, they had that meeting, I want to say within 2 months of Eisner coming on board, where that's the first time we hear about timeshares for Disney.
Timeshares, a Star Wars park. Yeah, the 10 possible ideas memo. Yeah, that was a great show.
Now, what's interesting is in the same window of time, word comes out of Kissimmee in 1985 that Gary Larson, not the cartoonist, but the owner of Larson's Lodge, which at the time was one of the largest, most popular privately owned hotels along 192. Gary announces he's going to be spending $5 million on a 72-acre water park, which will be just 2 miles away from Disney property.
That's way easier to get to than Wet and Wild.
Well, that's it exactly. Wet and Wild it's 18 miles away from property. And of course, the reaction that comes out of Burbank is like, oh, hell no. So December of that very same year, 1985, the Walt Disney Company announces plans to build a water thrill park. And by the way, Len, that is the actual language from the press release, water thrill park, that they're going to call Splash. By the way, Splash is spelled with an exclamation point at the end. And what I love about this story is it's such a great example of what Michael Eisner was like when he first got to Disney and in naming the water thrill park Splash. And it's why Splash? Because just prior to Michael's arrival at Disney as its new CEO, the studio had its first hit film in years, which was Ron Howard's Splash, that romantic fantasy comedy that was released to theaters in March of 1984, the one that starred Tom Hanks and Daryl Hannah. And just to put this in perspective, prior to Splash, the last hit that Disney had actually had was The Rescuers, which was June of 77.
2 hits in 8 calendar years.
Yeah, so again, there's a reason why, boy, I wish we were Lorimar.
I love that 2 ideas that Eisner comes up with in his first couple of years as CEO is basically, oh, they want to build a water park, we're going to build one too. Oh, Universal wants to build a studio tour, we're going to build a studios park as well.
That's the thing. Michael was a champion of low-hanging fruit, and more to the point, because he'd come from Paramount, which was a studio where if you had a hit film like Grease in the summer of 78, you put Grease 2 in development, which then arrived in theaters summer of 82. And so because Disney had had so few hit films in its modern era that the general public was interested in, the few hits that Disney had to be leveraged to the max, which is why, again, the Imagineers come to Michael and say, hey, we want to build a water thrill park. And he says, let's call this thing Splash. And then, he goes to Imagineering, and they show him the model for the flume ride that's going to be built at Disneyland. And he says, hey, you know what we should call that thing? Splash Mountain. Also worth noting here, because, again, Rescuers was the hit prior to Splash. Michael also, within his first couple of days on the ground in Burbank, turns to animation and says, hey, you need to get a sequel to The Rescuers in development, which is why we got, in November of 1990, The Rescuers Down Under. So, all right. Anyway, when the news breaks that Disney is planning on building a water thrill park on a site that's deliberately going to be just 6 miles away from Larson's Lodge, Gary Lawson effectively blinks. He regroups. He announces January of 86 he's halving the size of what he was looking to do with Watermania. It's now just going to be 36 acres, and it's going to cost just $2.5 million to build. This sudden change in plans, this overall change in the scope of the project, Len, there's no other way to say that it trips up Watermania. The park opens briefly in the summer of 86, but the general consensus is Watermania isn't ready for prime time. It closes for further construction and finally officially comes online March of 87 and is popular with the folks who are along 192. But even then, all eyes are on the construction that's going on with Splash, ! Disney's Water Thrill Park, which is now known as Typhoon Lagoon. And again, Disney being Disney, they broke ground on this 50-acre complex in February of 87, 1 month before the Larsons got Watermania open. So here's Disney playing hardball from a promotional point of view. And also another thing worth noting here is that Typhoon Lagoon was only meant to be a half-day experience, as was the original Disney MGM Studio Tour, which not a full theme park. It's a half-day experience, likewise Pleasure Island, with the thinking being that, well, look, we're bringing 3 things online in 1989.
3 half-day things.
3 half-day things. And the chances are 2 out of those 3 are going to catch the attention of any guest who's previously been to Walt Disney World. And they'll think, well, I got to go back. I got to schedule a trip. And of course, I'll go to the Kingdom and of course, I'll go to Epcot. But I'm going to need an extra day now, to either do MGM and the water park or MGM and Pleasure Island or you get the idea. And so that's 1 extra day of they're on property and they're eating in Disney restaurants and they're going through Disney.
It's a 50% increase over just Magic Kingdom Epcot. Okay, so fair.
But at the same time, what's fascinating is that as all of this is going on, Disney is developing a feature film that will be based on the backstory that the Imagineers have dreamed of for Typhoon Lagoon. And here's the interesting thing, Glenn. It's supposed to be a disaster movie. With the idea of you get to see first the pristine tropical paradise that was Mount Mayday, and then you see a typhoon sweep in, and, you then get to see, the characters you've been introduced to survive the storm, and then you get to see the amusing aftermath with the Miss Tilly now sitting on top of Mount Mayday, But again, what I love about this is that, the notion is, We then put this out into theaters and people get excited about this project and then have to visit the water park. But for the weird little bend of the story. So who does Disney hire to write the screenplay? But Gary Wolf, the author of Who Censored Roger Rabbit.
So the Typhoon Lagoon movie was going to be written by the Roger Rabbit guy?
Yeah.
This is a connection I did not envision this morning when I woke up.
But what's interesting is that Gary had written Who Censored Roger Rabbit. In fact, Disney actually bought the movie rights to this book while Who Censored Roger Rabbit was still in galley form. And largely it was because Disney was looking for yet another film like a Song of the South, a Mary Poppins, a Pete's Dragon, where they could combine, what Disney does best, animation with live action. And what was especially interesting about this is now a radically, I just have to caution people, if you ever read Who Censored Roger Rabbit, there's a lot of the same names, Jessica being Roger's, bride and Eddie Valiant being the detective, but it's a very, very different story. But Who Framed Roger Rabbit comes out in June of '88. Huge gamble on Disney's part. Was originally supposed to cost $27 million. Production cost ballooned over 40. And Disney needed Steven Spielberg's help to make this movie happen. And also worth noting here that Spielberg, along with George Lucas, reached out to Disney's board of directors in the summer of '84, when Eisner was still trying to convince those executives that he should be the company's new CEO. And Spielberg, who'd worked with Michael on Raiders and its sequel, Temple of Doom, flat out told Disney's board of directors that if they hired Eisner, Spielberg would then start making movies for Disney. So Who Framed Roger Rabbit was actually the make good for that promise. So anyway, Who Framed Roger Rabbit becomes a hit. Eisner, true to form, immediately begins making plans for sequels to the Robert Zemeckis movie. In addition, looking for ways to bring Roger Rabbit into the parks, but to make sure that the company has all the necessary ingredients to, in place to keep its Roger Rabbit success going. Michael makes sure to keep Gary Wolf close by. So that's why he gets this Typhoon Lagoon development deal. And there was a press release put out to release this deal summer of '88. It states that the forthcoming Typhoon Lagoon movie would be an unprecedented undertaking whereby a motion picture and a themed attraction will perfectly complement each other, a unique demonstrations of the capabilities of the Walt Disney Company. So that's a lot of words. Anyway, Wolf finishes the script in the fall of '88, submits it to Disney. Typhoon Lagoon opens in June of '89, a month after Disney MGM. The movie, however, never gets made. And now I have talked with Gary about this project. He used to live down in Massachusetts. Used to see him at a lot of the collectible shows. Nancy and I used to go all the time to the one in Natick that I want to say Mouse Club East. And, I will have to revisit this with him because back then he was reluctant to talk because he was still hopeful that Typhoon Lagoon would eventually be made. In fact, he was on his resume for years that I have written the Typhoon Lagoon movie that is still, in development at Disney. And
it's still been optioned. Okay, but it's 35 years later now. So
yeah, so I tell you what, I'll see if I can chase him down and if he'll share the story of the movie that was never made.
Yeah, if he's got a treatment or an outline or something, I'd love to see what it was.
Yeah, well, let me see what I can do.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for the show today. You can help support our show by subscribing over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia, where we're posting exclusive shows every week. Our most recent show, which is Season 1, Episode 8, is on the history of Disney stunt shows, and it starts with the Indiana Jones Don't Pull This Rope gag, of course. Check it out at patreon.com/JimHillMedia. You can find more of Jim at JimHillMedia.com and more of me, Len, at TorrentClans.com. Were produced spectacularly by Eric Hersey, who'll be showcasing his cotton candy art at the 6th annual Sparkle City Rhythm and Ribs Festival on Saturday, June 1st, 2024 at the Barnett Park, that's on East St. John Street in beautiful downtown Spartanburg, South Carolina. While Eric's doing that, please go onto iTunes and rate our show and tell us what you'd like to hear next. For Jim, this is Len. We will see you on the next show.